Well, everyone, welcome to the latest rendition of Young Red Angus Live. I'm your host, Jay Young. Before I get into our guest tonight, I want to say a special thanks to Elevate Ag for sponsoring tonight's episode. If you guys go to elevateag.com and use promo code Young Red Angus, you'll get 5% off your next purchase. We just bought some foundational fungi to apply to our oat seed for our cover crops that the cattle be grazing on. So we're excited about trying that and seeing how that product's going to work in our operation and getting mycorrhizal fungus back into our soils. So go to elevateag.com and use promo code Young Red Angus. So tonight's guest I'm really excited about because there's no pressure on me when you're interviewing one of your closest friends. Daniel, if we bomb, I don't feel bad about it at all.
There you go. No pressure at all.
Tonight's guest is Daniel Mushrush of Mushrush Red Angus. The Mushrush Red Angus is located in the Flint Hills. You guys are the largest Red Angus breeder in the state of Kansas, aren't you?
Maybe. I guess it'd be how you define that. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
The Mushrushes have the most registered Red Angus cattle in the state of Kansas. That's fair, right?
Probably. I think so. Frank wouldn't be far behind us, but yeah, I think it'd be. We run around 800 registered cows, so it'd be, yeah, we're big enough to be a headache, I guess, for ourselves.
So when I got into the Red Angus breed, I called Daniel and would ask him advice. And over the past few years, we've become great friends. So when I started doing Young Red Angus Live, he was one of the first people I thought about having as a guest because I want to do the first Wednesday of every month focused on cattle, rotational grazing, the breed, and visions for programs. So I thought Daniel would be one of the best people to have on. So Daniel, why don't you tell the viewers what you guys' program is all about and what it looks like?
Yeah. So like we said earlier, what we are, I guess, first of all, is we're a multi-generational ranch here in the Flint Hills, like you'd mentioned earlier. So at the current iteration, it'd be my dad and my mom, my wife and I, our 4 kids, and then I have 2 brothers who are also back on the ranch full time. So before that, it was my grandparents were here on the ranch with us. They've unfortunately passed, but it's always kind of been a family deal. We kind of the background, it's kind of a long story. We've been here a long time. Maybe in this current iteration, no, we're still a young, hungry business, and that's where it kind of throws people off. So we've been in Chase County pretty much since white men were in Chase County, honestly. My great grandfather fought for the Union, fought for a regiment in Wisconsin, and kind of a tragic story, actually. A family moved from Germany. They settled in a little town in Wisconsin. In the first year, the parents died, left a bunch of young kids. The war started up. They didn't have anything else to do because they were young and hungry, and so they joined the army. They each got a little piece of ground in Kansas after the war for fighting, and they walked from Wisconsin down to Chase County and kind of set up shop, and we've been here ever since, I guess.
That was like 1856.
No, they would have been in 18 I think 67, I think, is when they came in. So so that all kind of went place. They ran that kind of on the west side of Chase County for a couple generations. My great grandfather was a fairly infamous hypochondriac, and like he was I don't know exactly, 45, 50 years old, kind of ish, sold the farm to move to town to die, and lived to the ripe old age of like 94. So we would like to have that back, but we don't. But in our present kind of where we're at, kind of central Chase County, my grandparents kind of started piecing it together. My granddad actually served in the Korean War. Came back to Chase County. They bought a little piece. He was going to make a go of it, farming and ranching right as kind of the 51 flood hit, and then 54 I think was a big flood, and then there was some severe droughts in the late 50s, and he pretty much got ran out for the most part. Went and took a job in town working at a bank, and then he kind of was helped my grandma on the weekends while she stayed at home and did a lot of the day-to-day stuff, actually, until my dad came back from college in 1980. And then he and mom tried to make a go of it. If anybody kind of is aware, starting in 1980 was not a great time to start in anything ag related. But they managed to kind of get through that. And you fast forward a little bit and here we are today. Still growing. I mean, I always look at it essentially, I mean, grandma and grandpa kind of started it. I would make the argument that dad really built it as kind of his baby. So really, in my own head, I'm the second generation of Mushrush Red Angus. Even though if you ask somebody, we've been here forever and there's a lot of other stuff going on, I guess I kind of look at it in that iteration. So within the ranch, like I said, there's about 800 cows split spring and fall. The reason for that is it works well on paper, is what I tell people, kind of tongue in cheek, meaning, we can split our labor in half. We split our bull usage in half, or double our ability to use bulls. It also means you're busy all the time, which is good on paper because you're busy all the time. The bad news is you're going to be busy all the time. Because we're the Flint Hills and because there's such a flush of warm season grasses, we also do some short season steers, yearlings, because everybody else, I mean, that's what this country is really. And then we'll do some long season yearlings, but instead of just long season and then go to a feed yard, we run a commercial bred heifer program kind of under those confines of a Flint Hills stocker program. And so we'll AI those heifers. They'll go to grass. They'll be on grass until kind of early October. And then we pull those off and then we send them out at that time. So there's about, I think, 550 of those this year, a couple hundred steers. Unfortunately, with two calf, two seasons, and then any given time there's 3 or 4 calving seasons in the pipeline of development, just because of how things are. So you get all that said and done, and we'll waffle between 1,800 and 2,500 head at any given time. So it's enough to keep us pretty busy, and it will make sense as you and I get into some questions, kind of how we define what a good animal is and some of our management philosophies, because I feel like we have to be pretty strict on how we do things with the help that we have. And frankly, the resources that we don't have, or we're going to get run over.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you touched on it a little bit, but why don't you get into that? Why is the Flint Hills stocker country, and why is it so hard to make cattle profitable in the Flint Hills as far as their diet over the winter?
Yep. That's a good question. Yeah. So if you're from Eastern Kansas, you know this, or you kind of know this. So this is a backstory, I guess, for people that don't. So of the tall grass virgin prairie that existed, kind of starting around that kind of that 100th meridian, that kind of Great Bendish Hutch east, and then went all the way into Missouri, Illinois, Ohio, all in through there, traditionally was tall grass prairie. As settlers moved in, they dissed that up, plowed that under. We lost that native biome forever. When the settlers got to the Flint Hills, they earned their name. I mean, they're just straight rock. They couldn't break those with a plow. So of that tiny sliver of tallgrass prairie that still exists in North America, the vast majority of it is in the Flint Hills. So there's a couple things there. One is it's a native biome. And so these aren't improved pastures. We're not fertilizing this stuff. We're not interseeding. We're not doing anything cute, because this is, and I explain it to people, it's like a coral reef. If a coral reef is worth protecting, so are the Flint Hills. I mean, they're special.
Yeah.
Part of what makes them unique too is these native grasses. And if you've ever grazed native grasses, they do some things that are maybe a little different. But we have a tremendous flush of warm season grass. We burn. That's the other thing I guess is a little odd. We burn these pastures every year, and that's why they're still here. But after green up in May, we'll have grasses from May, June, and into July that'll be in the high teens for protein. Plenty of energy, plenty of punch. I mean, you can almost visually see the grass grow in June. I mean, it's pretty wild, actually. Greener than Ireland. But once August rolls around and those grasses start to dry off, that protein falls pretty quick. And we'll keep falling, keep kind of hardening off to the point that where we're at now is we're about 2% protein. The TDMs are terrible in this grass. It's straw or worse from a nutrient standpoint. And so instead of trying to keep cows on this country and trying to make that work, the solution has always been migratory animals. And that goes back as far as bison. I mean, bison would come in here, eat, and then they'd leave when the grass was no good. Well, once the white man kind of killed all the buffalo and kind of settled the country, this became a stopping point for Texas stockers.
Well, and real quick on that too, like a lot of people don't realize like how buffalo would migrate. Like they wouldn't migrate north to south. They would migrate east to west. They would go from the tall grass to the short grass because it was better for them over the winter.
Yep. Then they get back into the short prairie. Yep. And so this became kind of robber baron country. About the time my poor settlers got here, I mean, they were fighting with big railroad chunks of ground. But this became a stopover for yearlings that way because, as I like to tell people, there's tremendous market, and this is something for two seed stock producers to be talking about on YouTube. But one of the biggest margins to be made in livestock still in the year 2023 is by taking bad and making it average. And the Flint Hills are very good at that. I mean, they can take terrible, terrible cattle that are, I mean, not exaggerating, at the point of death. And you can kick them out for 120 days and leave them be. And when you come back in a couple months, you have a marketable animal. And so traditionally, that's kind of what's driven the Flint Hills. And then when that grass gets bad, you empty the country out. And so like right now, I mean, I share a lot of fences with a lot of neighbors. I don't think I have a pasture with another animal across the fence at the moment because everybody has yearlings. Yeah. And so that also drives, kind of goes back to, making sure your genetics fit. I mean, you better believe that these are the lean months that kind of, they define what we're doing with cow size, what we're doing with inputs, because we couldn't afford to feed a 1,600 pound cow, just couldn't. It's hard enough to feed a 1,100 pound cow right now. Yeah. And so that drives some of our decisions. It drives some of the regenerative stuff that we're going to talk about. Is the winter feed deficit is a big thing here. Everything we do is just survive till May. Once I get to May, I can kick everything out. I can cover up a lot of sins that we did in the winter. If we just get to May, everything else will take care of itself, and then we'll deal with it in October. So that's what ranching in the Flint Hills basically looks like.
So I think that it speaks to three things. One, your family's stubbornness / mental toughness, because everybody else is like, yeah, let's just make a bunch of money on stockers. But your parents' passion for developing efficient cattle makes them driven to say, okay, we're going to make it work because we want to make cattle that work and function in this country. And so I guess speak to those two things. Like it would be a lot easier to be a stocker guy and go on vacation over the winter instead of having a seed stock business. Why did your family choose that direction? And let's talk about the type of cows that work in your environment.
Yeah. So we used to be, we still do stockers. And so
Sure,
it's not like we've completely gotten out of it, but we used to be way heavier on stockers than cows, even in my lifetime. A couple things. I mean, it can make a lot of money from year to year, can also lose a lot of money from year to year. It's a very volatile market. And so there was that, I don't know if seed stock is always, it can be pretty darn volatile too, but you can, decide, well, we're going to keep those heifers and sell cows versus sell those heifers, keep those cows. There's more marketing windows as opposed to we sold these on Superior and they leave in August. Some of those things, you lost a little bit of marketing flexibility, and that was one of the. It was probably that as much as anything. The second deal, the passion, though, you definitely have to have passion to do this, but passion alone is not enough. Sure. I think is and more. And so, like we're going to be preg checking all day tomorrow. We're calving. We film bulls all day today. I mean, especially with 2 calving seasons, it gets pretty busy here. And so there is the passion deal is definitely, when you're pulling cedars at, 10 o'clock at night, so you can breed before it gets hot in June, or if you're doing it at everything in the dark in December breeding, or if we had 2 sets of donor cows here a couple of weeks ago and I screwed it up. And so 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. I was giving donor shots for 8 days in a row, 9 days in a row. And that kind of puts a little bit of a crimp in your social life, I guess. But so you have to have passion. You do. Otherwise, nobody else will do this. I mean, you wouldn't do it for the money, as you can be passionate about your hobby and then go be an investment banker or a lawyer or something and could probably come out ahead. But on the flip side of that, I think if you are addicted to, like you said, the stubbornness, I don't know what you want to call that engine that's under our hood, I guess. I have been accused, and it wasn't a compliment. All you do is push. All you do is push. And that's, it's if you know me and you do, it's probably accurate. And so, there is always that, and why seed stock works for me is I can always be better. I can do this better. I can do that better. I can be better at this. I am my own boss, and I'm also my own worst critic. And it's, I'm pretty hard to work for that way. I mean, I'm pretty brutal about it, but I think that is why seed stock works for our family, is because we want to make whatever we're doing better. And if we were, if we weren't in the registered seed stock business, but the ball bearings business, I mean, we'd be pushing to make the ball bearing better. And I don't know if that's DNA or if that's being brought up in the Flint Hills. I don't know if is that environment or is that genetics? I don't know, but that's the phenotype, I guess, that we display as a family. But yeah, that's kind of, I guess, a roundabout way of answering your question.
No, that was good. So you guys have been able to, can we talk about the rent agreement you guys have in the tall grass, or not get into detail on that? Okay.
Yeah.
Talk about that, about how you guys got the opportunity to do that and how that's worked out and where that idea came from. Cause I think that story is really cool.
Yeah. So one thing, and we're in year 2 of 5. And there's been some press releases. People might have seen some articles about us doing some things with some collars and some grazing studies. The way I describe it, so we share about, I think it's 3 miles or so of a fence with the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve. It in itself was a brainchild between Federal Park Service, National Park Service, and the Nature Conservancy in the early 90s. And in full disclosure, at the time, it would kind of cause a rift in the community. A lot of people didn't want them. I can't say that we necessarily wanted a national park for a neighbor. We didn't want that ground owned by the feds. And so the workaround was that TNC would own the ground. It would be privately held, but it'd be kind of administered as a park. And if we're going to be honest, there was a lot of uneasiness amongst neighbors, amongst community members for a lot of years about this deal. We can't in agriculture be like that anymore. I'm of that opinion very, very firmly. We cannot just continue to butt heads. And so what I started looking at it is, they have a list of things that they want, and it might look like, riparian prairie chickens, riparian areas, and then grazing ruminants on the grass, because the grass needs ruminants, just part of that. Across the fence, I looked at it as, ruminants, riparian areas, and prairie chickens third, wildlife, or however you want to look at it, because I do care about the biome. In the past, we were probably all a little bit too guilty of accusing everybody of getting the list out of order. And so, they would look at us and say, well, we weren't doing this right. And we'd look at them and say, well, they were doing it wrong. And there was a lot of back and forth. It was not always great. I looked at it as we all have the same list. So there is opportunity here to do something, because we don't have, just because might not have the order the same, we do care about the same things. So how can we take those same lists, look at things more broadly, and kind of get on the same page? One of the things we kind of came up with was doing some larger studies on, a prairie chicken, for example, doesn't stop because there's a barbed wire fence there. And we've done a really poor job, I would argue, about managing landscapes, as opposed to, how we do it now, kind of managing fence line to fence line. Fence line to fence line works if you're kind of an American and you think about private property rights and this is my ground and yada, yada. Like the guy with the deed is the only guy that really cares about that. I mean, like I said, the prairie chickens don't care about that. The invasive species coming in from one fence to the other, they certainly don't care about it. If anything, invasive species actually prefer a fence, because that's where the perching is for all the seed spreading from the birds and the trails that get worn. I mean, and so using that analogy, you can actually make the argument that the fence is a problem. And so what we did was we come up with what are some things we can do to leverage each one of our wish lists. We came up with a grazing study / prairie chicken study, because prairie chickens are endangered, and I'm not one to say that we got to do something to get them back. They are part of the community, and I'm not going to fight that. But I think we should be proactive about that. And so what we're doing is using electric fence collars to set up some different Lex sites, some different exclusion points, some different riparian areas too, because what it can also do is let us do a prairie chicken study and a water study simultaneously, because it lets us do these things. But instead of just them stopping at their footprint, they're also using our ranch. So their study area gets quite a bit bigger. And so what do we do for that? For giving them, access to all those different things on our ranch, is we signed a 5-year lease to graze on their side. So Mushrush Red Angus gets additional acres to graze, which has allowed us to do, among other things, bring a brother back into the business, change how we develop our fall bulls. I mean, it's just infinitely positive for us, and it makes their research more robust. Like I said, it just more Lex to count, more protection in terms of nesting areas, more riparian areas covered. So, we aren't bickering about who has the list in the right order. We're winning. And so everything, And like I said, we're managing this whole piece of property as a landscape, neighbors working together. And it's not a, I don't know if it's a revolutionary thought, but it is a different, it's sure a little outside of the box for how a lot of grass leases are working more and more. A lot of farm leases, frankly, are working in a lot of rural America, because it's unfortunately probably trending the other way, a little more adversarial. And so this relationship we're working with them has been really great. It's been good. So there'll be some field days. There's already been a couple. A lot of people have asked, and yeah, we'll have. We're going to do some other things this summer, but we're just scratching the surface, I think, of what we're going to be able to do on grazing management. Yeah. We look at it a little different. So, I mean, they don't like to eat the sides of a hill in the Flint Hills because it's full of rocks. The soil is naturally deeper in the bottoms, so the grass is actually more palatable in the bottoms. That's also where the water is. And so we have severe grazing distribution problems. As soon as we graze off that creek bottom, then we don't get a good fire like we talked about, and then trees come in. And so you get this whole breakdown of the entire biome at present because we're not doing some of these things. And so, bring this technology and push those animals up on the side hills. Like I said, exclude the prairie chicken leks when you need to, give them nesting areas when you need to. It's going to make more of a, hopefully, I think you'll see a lot less homogenized prairie landscape. Yeah. And when I say homogenized prairie, I mean, we're still talking like 150 species of vegetation. I mean, countless birds and insects. I mean, it's an incredible thing. But when you kind of graze it, almost a more of a patch burny, more rest here, more intensive grazing here, there's going to be a lot more planning going on with it. And like I said, it's across borders. I think that's the thing I want to drive home is we're managing the landscape regardless of who has the deed. And I think it's cool. I think it's there's maybe opportunity there for a future way of doing things.
So I know you have had some challenges with the callers, and I know it's something we probably can't talk about just because of the contract and stuff you guys have going. But when it works perfectly, or the vision for that in the future, what will that look like in a perfect world? And I think we both talked about how we think they're going to get there. There's some things they got to iron out, but what will that do for rotational grazing and for regenerative agriculture when that's working?
Whatever you want it to do. And that's why I think it's so amazing. It's such a non-linear system. And that's what I like about it here is I describe our ranch, for example. It looks like a map of Africa. So it's kind of bigger and wider up on top on the north side, and it kind of tapers down and it's smaller at the point in the south. And then if you look at it on Google Earth, there's all these straight lines that cut through it without any rhyme or reason to where they're at. Somebody just drew a parallel line here, drew a north-south line here. And you look at it, why is that there? That's not how we should be grazing this piece of ground. And we should be grazing this contour. We should be on this hillside this time of year because it's grama grass. And then we should be off of it. And then we should be down here at this other part. And there's these things, like I said, we're a family business. We don't have time for the animals we have and the other stuff we have going on to do this. If we did this, we do grazing management, all of this, and that's all we do. And we do like half of a job that we need to do. And so with this technology, you can say, we're going to graze that hill over there, the side of it. And these fences are kind of going to move, and you're going to do these, all these things are going to be great for grazing management. Absolutely incredible. And we were playing, I mean, the animals figure it out. It's really great. And we'll do exclusions, like I said, for prairie chickens, for wildlife. I think those things are good. Animal health. First thing we did was put another hot, quote unquote, barrier around all of our fences, because like we said, we do have barbed wire fences keeping us from some yearling from who knows where who has, who knows what, some BBD positive, leukosis, whatever, whatever it is. Well, then we keep them away. And we do a good job of managing those diseases with a vaccine protocol and changing every needle and some of these things. But if you can just keep those animals 20, 30 feet away, it's better anyway. And so there's just a lot of things it's going to be able to do. We manage these big pastures. A lot of times, say we're going to do a working event just to get those animals found. If you're in a 2,000, 3,000 acre pasture, it takes quite a while just to go get them. If you have a way to just have them at the gate when you get there with a horse so you can drive them the last 2 miles, you might have saved 4 or 5 people 3 hours apiece. Just in man-hour savings. And so
and I think the other thing about that too is like regenerative agriculture can be extremely idealistic, because there's the way things should be and then there's the way things are.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Like I know that I should be doing rotational grazing, all the time, but I also know that some of my ground that has been poorly managed for years, that I'm just getting into rotational grazing. If I have 11 inches of rain, which is pretty much what we had this last year, and I want to do corn stalks, like I did some rotational grazing on my corn stalks. I wish I wouldn't have even put a hoof on there. Like, integrate livestock. Yeah, that's a great principle. But when your ground is really, really bad shape, like it's not really something that works. And so I think rotational grazing, like you brought up, it's not something that everybody has the time for. But with these collars, to me, it's a game changer, because it allows for people to be able to get into it that might not have ever got into it before.
Yes. Yep. Well, and the opposite is true on rain. So say, we're on the right side of the state, we might get 11 inches of rain in a night. And if we, I don't really push stocking rates usually because of those events, because like I said, this is virgin prairie and you can mud it up and boy, you can hurt it for a long time. And it's not like some fescue that you just go overseed and go start over again. And so, with the collars, say you get some event like that, if you have everything roped off on hot fence, which is also hard to push that many step in posts in the solid rock, but that's a story for another problem, or, a problem for another day. But, if you do get something like that, like a big rain event, and you have cattle crunched down, just get on your computer and hit the eject button, spread them out.
Yeah.
Even if it's lightning's cracking and you're a little worried about it, it's not like you're going to have to go out there and reel up fence or go move cattle that are 5 miles away and then go do the other set. Just hit buttons on your computer, spread them out. It's really exciting. I mean, I agree. It's going to be pretty cool.
So let's also talk about, like, you had already started doing rotational grazing with polywire. When did you start doing rotational grazing, and what has that opened up for you guys' ranch, and how have you seen rotational grazing positively affect you guys?
Yeah. So we started kind of after the last drought, kind of coming out of 2011, 2012. We started it out of necessity. Basically, it was something we had to do, not something that we wanted to do. Mainly because we were seeing pastures like these, we've got to let these things catch up. We have to move this set of cattle because this pasture can't take it. We came out of the drought and we liked it, and it started to rain again and we kept doing it. And this will sound a little weird. We manage it a little different than maybe what other people would. I don't manage it in terms of maximizing animals. I look at it more as animal days an acre. And so what I mean by that is we'll grow to kind of keep everything vegetative, keep it growing. We'll kind of do on the native anyway, kind of a slow, kind of hit everything in 30 days, hit everything in 45 days, hit everything in 60. And so as that grass turns, we just kind of slow our roll. Trying to keep everything vegetative, let it all kind of get ahead of us a little bit. Instead of trying to hit every bite while the grass is good, I've got to have something for my cattle to eat from October to March. And so I let that grass get ahead of us. I let it get pretty big and tall, kind of keeping it vegetative as long as we can with that grazing. And then we'll actually go in there with just like a Biuret product. And we have all that low quality forage, but we can cheaply get a cow to about the first of the year. This year was actually more like the middle of January for, it used to be pennies a day. Now it's a little more than that, of course, with everything else. But, we were still way sub $1 a day. Just because we grew that extra grass when we had the ability to, and then we just kind of sit on it and use it up, and then kind of still keep enough we can calve in and not kill anything or carry a fire in April. And so we kind of keep it where we need it, but we haven't, when we first started doing it, I had this idea in my head that we're really going to grow our numbers because of rotational grazing. And to be honest, we might here and there, be able to carry, sneak another half a dozen cows in that pasture or something like that. But for the most part, it's just getting more out of what we can. And that's, and then you kind of hinted at, we do have some fescue, and that's something we did that was kind of wild, that if anybody's ever driven on Highway 50, they've seen it, probably even wondered what the heck we were doing. But we do that a little different. We'll do that. We'll cut those down because it is tame pasture. We'll cut that down as little as 2 acres, 2.5 acres at a time with a pretty large group of animals. And that's just to get every bite, just maximize every little bit of production we can out of that fescue. Especially in the winter, we get to November, like I said, those are our lean months. And when we have stockpiled fescue, there's not another valuable square foot of real estate on the ranch than a stockpiled fescue field that's about 20 inches tall. And so we divvy that up pretty sparingly. And that's why that started, was just because, that stuff is just worth gold, especially in a year like this. And so those cows kind of they eat it, they don't lay in it. They eat it, and then they have to go creep back, and they have to go lay on what they've already eaten or something like that. But what they're eating at the time, we want to use it up, right? Just so it's a little different. It's all grazing efficiencies. But the two work well. The two are different. Rotational grazing works pretty well for both, but it is there's more differences than what you'd think, maybe managing native versus managing tame fescue. I like fescue.
Speak to that. Explain that. What's the differences?
I don't care if I kill fescue. I manage it way more aggressive. You tighten it up way more aggressive on stocking rates, way more aggressive on trying to do things a little more, turning larger groups of cattle a lot more aggressively. Like I said, we're going to reseed a couple corners here and there because we had some cattle out during some rain and some snow and stuff, and probably killed out a little bit of grass or thinned it out. It's just fescue. I always go back to that. It's just fescue. Like 90% of the people who have fescue hate it. And I always tell them, you've obviously never tried to ranch with any other type of grass. Like, it is absolutely wonderful. Absolutely a wonderful grass. But we don't have cattle on it in July and August. So, we're out on native.
Well, and I think that's what's interesting too, is like wherever you go, you find people that complain, and like everybody here complains about how little it rains, how dry it is, and how terrible. And for good reason, it's challenging. But I remember it was either last year or 2 years ago in August. You got more rain in one night than I had gotten all year.
Like the whole year up to that point. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I was like, we were both pissed about it, because I'm like, it never rains. And then you send me the pictures of the fence line in your,
you got like half a mile of fence.
Yeah. Sorghum suited game grass, because the water flooded through and just took the fence out, and you had to walk through in the humidity and pull out barbed wire out of 8 foot
barbed wire out of knocked over sorghum sedan field. Yeah, real nice.
I thought, I can't imagine something more miserable to do.
We were finding like crawdads and fish like a half a mile from the creek. It was a little sticky that day. But yeah, it's like you said, every part of the world has its challenges, of course, but yeah, it's always something. It seems like it's always something for everybody. So
Yeah. So on your ideal female, how are you guys building your cow herd, and what are the when you're selecting your bulls, what are the top things that you guys select for?
yeah. So there's a double edge. So we can answer, what do I do for customers versus my own personal animal? What is an ideal cow? I'll start with that. This will be a little bit counterintuitive to what you would expect. The ideal cow for me is one that I never give any thought to.
Mm.
And the reason I say that is because I already kind of established, we're short on labor. We're pretty stretched out for the help we have. Why do we not have hired help? Because nobody will work for the pay that I give myself for the stupid hours that I do. So the best thing, it's kind of sad. So the easiest way to grow has just been to bring home a brother. And that's kind of been our solution. Is there's a sucker born every minute, especially mushrushes. If you notice, there's a bunch of us. And so you just bring another home. Because of that, though, we don't have, I always tell people that, I look, there's two types of cattle programs in the US. One is consistently profitable, one is not.
Mm.
Those two, there's really no gray area. It falls into these two buckets really fast. One is where the people work for the livestock. The other one is where the livestock work for the people. So I look at it as, from a broader view, I'm more of like, say, a CEO, and I have 2,000 employees.
Mm.
And those are the cows. Those are the heifers. Those are the animals that are out here working. They are working for me. So what is a good employee? One that doesn't get sick, doesn't get lame, whatever, through her development without giving me any problem. I don't notice her. And then we get around and we AI her, and she settles AI. And so there was never any drama with the bull, never any doubt. She lays down, she has an AI calf. We, without assistance, because we check them every 24 hours, whether they need it or not. I mean, we don't night calve. We don't, you and I have had some talks about the ideal calving size or pin. And I guess for people at home, I'm firmly of the opinion, the bigger, the better. I think you have fewer problems with cattle getting confused, fewer issues with, claiming other calves or losing their calf because they're come up to feed or whatever. Just get them in huge areas where they can get off by themselves, bond with that calf for 24 hours, 48 hours, and then bring it back to the group. Spread them out, but with that comes one that she better have calving. She better have maternal ability to beat off the coyotes. I mean, not just any old cow is going to be able to do this, but better have something bred in pretty maternal. And that's what we have. We have cows that we calve in pretty big pastures. They go do it on their own. I mean, I have a calf puller for backwards calves and stuff. We've been calving for a week and a half, and I don't even know where it's at. Like, if I had an emergency right now, it'd be a problem because I'm not set up to pull a calf. I don't know where that stuff is. But so the ideal cow would, lay down, have that calf AI, do a good job, and then she'll have another calf AI next year, and then the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that, and she won't, have her udder go bad. She won't have her feet go bad. She won't become a real thin rail that makes me take a note. She'll be a cow with no notes. Yep. I won't notice her. And then all of a sudden I'll turn around one day and she'll be 8, 9 years old. And I'll look back and she's put 3 bulls in the sale, and I got 3 daughters that are in production out of her. And that's the ideal cow. That's the one.
That's one thing I appreciate about our friendship is, other than when it's freezing and I don't want to lose them because it's freezing, I don't go out at night. And I love learning that from you. That's like, you may have one that's backwards and you should have been there or whatever, but the not losing your mind because you're not at night because you're checking heifers is nice.
Yeah.
And good.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's a little selfish. I mean, I like to sleep, but too, I mean, like we had said, like, we're we film bulls all day today for a bull sale, and we can talk about my sanity for having bull sale prep while I'm calving, but I need to be other places. My head needs to be other places. I don't have time to baby these things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Well, with that, obviously we're probably going to lose one or two or whatever. I mean, I'll probably lose less just because I have less females, but we'll lose a small percentage.
yep, it happens.
But in the long run, your herd's going to be better for it, and your customer is going to be better for it because they're buying genetics that are easy to deal with.
Well, and a lot of these things, I think, learned behaviors in animals is a big deal. And so, if an animal learns that, oh, it's time to calve, he's going to get me in that straw. And, that is one sort of animal, as opposed to the one it's like, I'm going to calve, I'm going to go hide, and I'm probably going to be ticked off for a little bit because I know there's going to be some coyotes coming, and I'm going to love this baby. And as soon as it's out of me, I'm going to lick it up and get it on its feet because it's got to go. And those cows are worth a lot. Those cows that, like I said, they're working for you. That's the ones I want. And we have, I do think that, genetics play a role in that cow. And I'm not going to say we don't use EPDs or don't do genomics or don't flush some of those cows so we can get more of them. I'm a big proponent of taking cows and getting embryos out of the ones I like and getting them in younger, getting them in recips and building those better animals and moving my own bell curve. And that's, that's for my customers too, because if I can put the best product I can out there, that's going to help in the long run. But those are the genetics that we're working on. Just don't give me problems.
Another thing that I was positively influenced by you guys is the shorter calving window. So, I picked up on that from you and Bruce like 5 years ago. Now this will be the 5th year of only having, well, we're on 50 days now. The first two years it was 45, now it's 50. But you see your conception rates are 85%. Now they're up to 95. Well, they were 2 years ago. This year with the drought, they dipped down a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if another heat cycle or two is going to save any of the cows this year. Boy, I think everybody was pretty much in estrus by August because it was not great.
Anyway, so going to that shorter calving window, how is that? Like, what have you seen as far as your genetics and how that's improved your genetics by having the shorter calving window?
Yeah, what you talked about. I kind of joke with people. So, being the guy who tags a lot of calves, I did it the first couple times the first year because I was selfish. And, with 2 seasons a year, if I cut 15 days off of each calving window, that was a month of my life. And so we kind of talked about it, and then we just went and did it. And I remember very vividly, my mother told me at one point, she said, "This is going to be your problem. You did this." And we had more that first year because you cut your tail off. I mean, you cut your tail end. But then all those other cattle are the ones that always breed up anyway. And so as you push them up there, I think it was like 2 or 3 years later, Mom was telling somebody about a 45-day calving window. And it was a decision that we all made, or we did this, and we have a 45. And I thought, well, that's me and the mouse in my pocket, I guess. But I took that as that was a sign it worked, that it went from I to we. But no, it's the manpower deal. Do you eat some more opens at first? You do, in a commercial setting, are those tail enders? I mean, are they worth more than being open? Yes. But they come with their own headaches. I mean, marketing window and, inconsistent calf crop. Everybody who knows, ever done like any sort of spring branding or spring calf processing, and you have like the 3-day-old calf, that is terrible. And so we did it from a manpower deal, just trying to start in getting AIing again, getting cows set up and getting all that stuff. Those little calves were just a pain in the butt. It was a pain in the butt. If I go out there and tag 15 a day, well, it's worth my time. If I drive because they're pretty big calving pastures. So like in the fall, for example, if I go my loop, once I go out and check a couple pastures, is 17 miles on a 4-wheeler. If I go out there and I tag 20 calves, it's worth my time. If I go out there and calve 1 or 2 and it's November, I've moved on. I just don't want them. So that's the manpower issue. And 2, because we're selling genetics, those cows are not of, they're kind of that tail end for a reason. Is that really where I want my bulls to be selected from for my customers? Is that where I want my own replacements to be selected from? And so the way I've got around that is, because we have 2 calving seasons, as soon as they're open, there would have been kind of those tail enders, especially when we got started. We drop their papers, so they're no longer a registered cow. They don't go and ever enter that realm again. We put an embryo in them, and so we're just moving that bell curve. So I take some of those favorite cows of mine, and instead of having that tail end set of cows, they're a front end set of cows. And as soon as they don't take an embryo anymore, they go to town. Yeah. And that's been how we've kind of moved those cows around and just extract that value. Or if they're 7-8 years old, we'll bring them into our feed yard, and about the most non-regenerative thing I can do is make an open cow gain about 7 pounds a day, because I'm cramming corn in her throat as fast as she can. And then I take them to Gibbon Pack in Nebraska, and that works too.
Yep, for sure. So one other thing I wanted to ask you guys about your program. So when you're selecting bulls specifically, what are the most important criterias, and then specifically like EPDs? What EPDs do you look at, and which ones are absolutely worthless?
So I pay a lot of attention to the bottom side of the pedigree, first and foremost. I pay a lot of attention to the bottom side of the pedigree. And I feel like that's done us a lot of good. A bull that's out of a good cow who himself, who is also out of a female that also had some, a good cow herself. You stack those good cows, that helps you in the long run. So what is that good cow? Well, like we said, those ones that do a good job and do it often and kind of, do those things right. What I do on EPDs is I try, and this will probably make sense how we discuss this, is very rarely do I look for the bestest or the mostest or the leastest. I try to be, more than breed average. I try to be on the right side of the bell curve. But I'm not going to be like that 2 standard deviations out really on the tail end. So I'm kind of back in the meat. But so what that looks like, I've had a guy tell me he was looking through our cow herd the other day, and he said he couldn't believe, he said every other cow is a 15 CED to a 95 yearling weight. And that's true. And you start looking at it, and those are the sort of cattle that work for me, that don't give me problems. So what is that for people who are just looking at percentiles? That's going to be an animal that's like a 25th, 20th percent calving ease. So I'm going to have that calving ease that I can ignore them, but it's not those ones that are the top 1%ers that are going to get flat, going to have pelvic issues, some development issues. They're not extreme. The weaning side, if I'm quite honest, if I weren't looking at, developing cattle for other people, I'd rarely look at growth traits. The Flint Hills can wean a 500-pound calf, whether we like it or not. That's all the Flint Hills can do. Mm-hmm. So there's no sense in me pushing a lot of growth, because if I just push excess growth, I'm just going to have cows that are too big to fit this system. So a 95 is a little less than breed average. 100 is plenty fine. Any bull that's like 110, 120, 130, 140, you get these bulls that are like top 10% growth. They just make daughters that are absolutely a disaster for us with our hands-off model of, we don't mess with you at all, then I'm going to kick you out on native and you get to eat Bayouret for dinner when you go eat your straw hay when you're done. Like, it doesn't work. It just does not work for us. So little less than breed average. Some of the convenience trade EPDs, obviously, I don't see a downside in maximizing those out. I wish I had more data turned in at the Red Angus level. But stayability, why, I mean, I don't know, like, what does a cow that stays in the herd too long look like? So, I'm not scared of it being high. Heifer pregnancy, same way, like, what does a heifer that's too likely to get bred as a heifer look like? Well, maximize that one out too. And so I'm not scared of those. Going into the carcass traits, one that I do is a little backwards, that our feed yard guy doesn't like me for doing it, but we're always being the whole yard average cost to gain by a long shot when we get out there, is the worse back fat, the better. If an animal's a 99th percentile of back fat, I like that. And does that give me yield grade issues that I have to feed around in a feed yard? Yes. But a feed yard's a pretty, that's a pretty easy controllable thing to do. You remove a lot of variables in a feed yard. That's why they work. And so we know that we can feed those cattle around it. We feed them around that issue, and then we're done. So, that's a long way when I'm saying high input cattle won't work in a low input environment, but low input cattle will work if you put them in a high input environment, I guess is how I'm saying that. Marbling, I like marbling. I mean, we do have to have a product that people eat. I don't chase it probably nearly as hard as other people. And I think probably a lot of that is because once I settle some of my other things, it's just kind of hard to get some of those animals. And
yeah, the marbling deal is tough, because if somebody's selecting specifically for marbling and they don't care about the maternal aspects of it, I find it extremely hard to beat that individual, especially like when we talk about how the whole balance, quote, that my cattle are balanced. It's like, well, if this program is going to push marbling to the nth degree, it's going to be tough for you to even be balanced.
Yes. Yep. And so, I mean, like I said, I hold industry average. And this is something I am proud of, that we do still feed cattle. We still do things, quote unquote, in the mainstream, because I think it's very easy for registered breeders to believe their own bull crap.
Yeah.
And get in a bubble. Whereas, so, we run yearlings, we run bred heifers, we put a lot of cattle in a feed yard. We know what these cattle do. And I think there is value to that. But I think our last cattle out were about they're like 10% prime and 99% choice. So, I mean, we weren't 50% prime. What we were, though, was we were so far underneath the cost of gain for the yard average for that week, it equated to about $80 a head. So I made my carcass premium before I ever killed them, is how I look at that. And then we still made, I think, $40-50 a head premium. And so we made a carcass premium, but it wasn't just over the top. But what we did was we made it, we saved a lot of expensive grain, which was a big deal this year. We still had a product that somebody's going to like, and we didn't destroy our cow herd in the process. And that's that cow depreciation is a big number that a lot of people don't think about when they're doing their cows. And that's a number that is hard to quantify sometimes without, getting accountants involved, but it'll eat you alive if you're not careful in the cow business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to note too, like, both of us have cattle that marble well, and they have high EPDs for marbling. It's just not the number one thing either one of us select for. So Daniel, we're about on time, but tell the guys or the viewers about your bull sale and when it's.
Yeah, I'm the only person who sells red Angus bulls in the state of Kansas.
No, I've thought about that. I'm like, I'm either like extremely confident in what we're doing to have another seed stock guy who is bigger, much bigger than our program on as a guest in the same month that I'm selling bulls. I'm either confident in what we're doing or stupid, but either way, here we are. Actually, that's all the time we have for this.
Yeah. No, we sell 200 bulls on March 17th. Some fall bulls, some yearlings. We'll have we're going to preg tomorrow. So I'm hoping to have a huge amount of fall bred heifers because I had a good breed up. There'll be more than a pot load, hopefully 60, 70 head. And then we'll sell a handful of open heifers. Yes, a real select set of open registered heifers. So try to have something for everybody. But yeah, videos will be on DV auction, and mushrushedangus.com has a sell page with the catalog, the videos, the spreadsheet, all the information. So if anybody has any interest, they can reach out to me, and we can get them taken care of. Like I said, the only ones in Kansas. It's a heck of a deal.
The only ones in Kansas. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for being a guest.
In my defense, you barely live in Kansas.
You know what? That's an accurate statement as well. I don't get claimed by Colorado, and everybody east of Hayes has such contempt for the west side of the state because
there's only 1,500 people in the state of Kansas that realizes Kansas it's in mountain time, and it's only the 1,500 people who actually live it, right?
That's, you know what? There's less than 1,000 people in my county, so you're not even giving it their dismal demographic that it is. But anyway, thanks a lot for being on, Daniel. I really enjoyed it.